he's not going to get traded this year. Even if he wanted to get traded, he's not getting traded this year. And I don't think he wants to get traded. But I can see the end of that, and I guess I am kind of sour about that, and I think that's too bad. I think that's too bad for everybody.
Yeah, but perhaps it can get better. I mean, if they get to the NFC Championship game, is that enough? If they get closer than they've been? Because that's the other part of it. They haven't been that close. They've made the playoffs, but they have been out relatively early.
Yeah, they should, but then I look at what happened with Rodgers this past year. And, I mean, Rodgers, the whole year, everything looked like, hey, he didn't like what they did in the offseason, but it lit a fire under him. He's playing awesome. The team's great. And all it took was a loss in the NFC Championship game for him to kind of dial it back up to 11 in terms of his hostility and say, okay, now it's time for you to, if you want me to really invest in me, and let's go for it right now.
But they did draft his replacement. I mean, that's the huge difference in this situation. Otherwise, you are right.
They did draft his replacement. They've also built an offensive line in the way that I think Seattle should build it, in that they've erred on the side of linemen who are better at pass protecting than run blocking, right? Like, it seems like more than Seattle has. Seattle's gotten these big mammoth dudes that they want to be powerful and push people around, and that I do think that Seattle would be better off and Russ would be better off if they had a line that was maybe more like Green Bay's than like the one they have. And it might be too late to even make that because Brandon Shell's an enormous dude. But there's part of me that looks at it and is like, yeah, they've kind of built the offensive line the right way.
That's something that can only be done gradually.
Yeah.
If it were something that could be done in one offseason, then fantastic. That's the problem. It's a process, and Russ has to know it's a process to get an offensive line that's acceptable. It's not going to happen with just one draft or with one free agent offseason. And they made progress from last year to this year.
They did. We talked last week about this happens, and Seattle's had stars leave before, and we were wondering about sort of the difference between A-Rod and Ken Griffey. Like, why when Griffey asked for a trade did Seattle's fans not hold it against him, certainly in the same way that they did when A-Rod signed that mammoth contract with the Rangers. I think the reason is because when you have a player leave because he thinks that he can win more elsewhere, or he will like that it's not a quality of life decision, that it's not about something, that it's about you're not good enough for me or you're not paying. That's when the vitriol comes from. And there was some of that last week that I felt that from Russ. That I felt that this was, we're not winning enough for my tastes. We're not winning as much as I should. Like there was, and that, it still sits with me raw. Like it does. And that's probably the reason, because I do think I am kind of grouchy today. And I'm taking it out on poor Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is feeling the brunt of my dissatisfaction.
Well, I mean, I feel the same way as you, and I know a lot of people listening right now probably have a little bit of fatigue about it, but I mean, we want a resolution to this. And I'm hearing the same thing as you, and that's what bothers me the most, is that I had a different perception of Russ, to the point of I just thought all these guys in the Legion of Boom and others who might have sour feelings towards Russ after leaving the Seahawks. Like, I always thought they were crazy. Just like, what is wrong with you guys? And now for the first time I'm seeing it. Oh, well, maybe they had a point. And maybe Russ, this guy who is so polished and says all the right things at the right time, maybe he isn't everything that we made him out to be. And maybe we shouldn't have made him out to be all those things as it was anyway. I mean, a lot of these quarterbacks, they're different. They all have different mentalities no matter how they portray themselves. But they're all, most of them, concerned about the way that they come across because of all the branding opportunities and stuff.
Do you think this is fixable? Do you think there's a long-term that this relationship will be sustainable?
I do. I mean, because I think if you're the Seahawks, you're like, okay, this is annoying, but it could be way, way worse.
That's definitely true. Look, like of all the different having a quarterback that you know is going to show up.
Yeah.
And that he truly does value winning more than anything else. He values winning more than stats. This isn't about passing. You're right about that.
And he's one of the hardest workers in the NFL. I mean, there's no way a guy of his size and stature is able to make it coming out in the third round and having transferred. This guy's he has perseverance. He's got everything that you want out of a quarterback. So you can overlook this. This isn't like James Harden getting like beefy and then forcing his way out of town and then saying, well, that's not really who I am. That's not in my character to get traded out of town, which he said over the weekend.
Did he get beefy? I think he was wearing a padded shirt for the warm-ups to look worse. Have you seen him as a net? He's skinny. Like he's not. He looked. I think he was wearing clothes that made him look doughier than he was.
Maybe he was. But look, Russ would not do this because I think Russ actually has honor as far as that goes.
You need to keep talking, Paul, because this is making me feel better. Like,
Yeah.
So it is.
It's
so
not.
He cares
It's not
about
the end of the
winning.
world,
He's trying.
right? I mean, this is still like, and I want to make it clear. I feel bad about this to an extent too, because a lot of people have been like, oh, you've been just taking out an AK-47, douche, 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 and you're going after us. No, there's some things that he has said that are annoying, and there are things that have changed my perception of him. This is still one of the best, hardest working quarterbacks in the NFL. And there's no way that the Seahawks are looking at this and thinking to themselves, okay, oh, this is the worst. This has not gotten to a point like it has with Deshaun Watson in Houston. It's not even close to that. And people are lumping these two conversations together, perhaps because it's the beginning of the offseason, and they're thinking, all right, well, I mean, if Deshaun Watson wants out, then Russell Wilson must too, which is probably erroneous.